Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Cedar Point Recreation Park. In the last episode we worked on the layouts for Raptor and Blue Streak. And today we're going to switch gears yet again and work on some buildings near the front of the park. Now, as I keep mentioning, I do like to focus on the layout of the park first, simply because it's going to be a lot easier to plan the layouts while we have just rides and kind of like a sketch of the park layout before we get too detailed with scenery and things like that. However, I feel like the front of the park here is pretty solid, and I did want to spend a little bit of time working on something that looks nice, just to give a bit of a feel of what I'm aiming for as far as my buildings are going to go. Buildings have long been my weakest point when it comes to building nice looking parks in OpenRCT, and that's something I'm constantly trying to rectify. You know, just got to keep practicing and eventually it'll get better. So that's what we'll be doing today. There is, as you may or may not know, a large restaurant next door to Raptor and the Skyride station. It used to be called the Midway Market. It's probably had a few more names before that. I don't remember off the top of my head. Now it's called Hugo's, and it's just an Italian dining experience. And I also thought it'd be nice to throw something in there to give my angry peeps something to eat. They've been very upset and hungry all this time. So we threw in a pizza stall and a hot dog stall to keep them satiated. Not 100% sure I'm happy with the way this building turned out. As you can see, it took a couple iterations to get the walls to look semi-reasonable, and I'm still not totally pleased with how everything turned out. It still looks pretty flat. The main problem with this building, of course, is the entrance is on the diagonal, and it's pretty hard to get that to work properly. Especially with all the track architecture that I used for the roof. Getting that to work on the diagonal is a big pain. The orthogonal ones worked just fine. I'm happy to do those all day long. But yeah, the diagonal one for the front entrance was not very fun. I tweaked that quite a bit, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for it. Wound up with something that looked pretty okay. I did have some weird issues with the guest pathing. I got a lot of them trapped at the front and they weren't able to exit, so you'll see a lot of peeps being lost inside this restaurant for a while. I do wind up making the entrance a bit wider to help alleviate that, but I think a big part of it is just bad peep AI. They're just real good at getting lost, so not much we can do about that. One thing that I noticed when I was working today that was super helpful is that I realized that not only does Google Maps have 3D views of Cedar Point, it also has a lot of street view, which is going to make buildings like this a whole lot easier to replicate. Not necessarily make them look good, of course, but definitely will help me get a better idea of what they look like if we can see what they look like close up with a pretty high quality camera from the street view folks. So I was able to throw in a couple small details, like at the side of Hugo's there are some booths that are presumably some sort of guest services. I don't actually know what they are, but I threw some info kiosks in there because I figured it was appropriate for that part of the building. Just little touches like that. Don't necessarily add a whole lot for the average person, but I enjoy building those kinds of things, so made me happy at least. So in addition to Hugo's, we also have the big bathroom stall area next to Raptor. Not a whole lot to say about this one. Kind of a weird shape. Got some peeps lost in there building it. Other than that, just a pretty straightforward build on this one. I'm not totally happy with the coloring and roof. It looks pretty close to the real thing, but when building parks like this, you're always making a compromise between something that looks accurate and something that looks good. So probably we'll come back to these buildings at some point in the future and do some tidying up, maybe some redesigning. If I have time. Who knows if I'll ever have time to get back to these. There are a lot more buildings to do aside from just these few here. So we'll see. I also figured while we were back here, we might as well knock out the Point Pavilion, which is a quite large eating area. A lot of picnic tables under a little roof. Not a whole lot going on back there. Not something you'd typically see on the average person's trip to the park. But it takes up a pretty big footprint, and we're already in that part of the park, so I figured we'd knock it out. I originally started with just a flat roof with the mechanical blocks, and didn't look that good. The real roof has this very slight angled pattern to it, so I figured we could replicate that with some more trackitecture, and it turned out okay, maybe a little bit too busy to the eye, but I'll take that over a little bit too bland. Still quite a lot of backlot type areas to go through here that I'm not going to be able to get a good grip on just with the Google Maps and Street View. We can guess at what some of these things look like. For example, there's a mysterious utility building behind this pavilion. I'm not really sure what it is, so I just threw some pieces in there that I thought looked kind of reasonable. Might also go back and tweak that again later. Just wanted to get something down, so I knew what was there. So if we come back and clean up various buildings, I'll at least remember what I was supposed to put there. So all told, this episode was about 2.5 hours of playtime just to make these few buildings and plazas. Buildings are definitely going to take up the majority of the time when making a park like this, which is why I'm still trying to put it off as much as I can and get the layouts done first, and then we'll come back and add in more of these buildings here. But I also wanted to give an impression of the kind of buildings that I'm going to be making to you. So it's not just a bunch of red grids and coasters in every episode. And, you know, I don't want to get burned out on just one style of building. We'll do some layout one episode. We'll do some buildings another episode, kind of switch it around, trying to avoid burnout. If I ever want a shot at finishing this park, it's going to take some effort to make sure that I am keeping things fresh and interesting for myself. And I want to keep things fresh and interesting for you guys as well. So anyway, that's going to do it for today. I think next time we'll switch back to working on some layouts, keep expanding the park design, and maybe build a coaster. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see how things go. As always, if you've got any questions, suggestions, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.